So the first piece that I'm going to talk about today is Castillo's. On page 4, she writes, "I would like to note that when I speak of white feminists, I do not limit myself to North Americans, but to the international white feminist movement, which includes Mexico, Latin America, and Europe." This quote, upon first examination, is not very deep, nor is it an important claim that she makes in her argument, but I found it very relevant to the discussions we've been having in class. She leaves nothing to interpretation, and there's no binding race. It made me aware that when she first said white feminists, I limited that to someone advocating for rights in the United States. I silenced all other feminists who identify as white in all of the other countries. The simple statement is to make sure that she is being inclusive and including everyone that's working toward the same goal, but it made me aware of how inherent race is in everything, even though we don't realize it, and that's something that she's calling attention to. From Borderlands / La Frontera by Gloria Anzaldúa, I found a quote from page 1593. It's, "Instead of serendipitously ripping off the vital energy of people of color and putting it to commercial use, whites could allow themselves to share and exchange and learn from us in respectful ways. By taking up curanderismo, Santeria, shamanism, Taoism, Zen, and otherwise delving into the spiritual life and ceremonies of multicolored people, Anglos would perhaps lose the white sterility that they have in their kitchens, bathrooms, hospitals, mortuaries, and missile bases." Before reading this text, I was warned that the code switching she employs between Spanish and English would make me uncomfortable. She writes in Spanglish because those two languages define her being, they're who she is, and that didn't really make me uncomfortable. I've heard Spanish spoken my entire life, even though I have no Hispanic ancestry. It wasn't abnormal for someone in class to go "como se dice," and no one really thought about it a second time. And I've taken Spanish classes since a freshman year in high school, so I was able to understand most of what she said. But the way it's written is super powerful. It's a prime example of how she has held on to her culture in a world that encouraged her not to. My cousin's father was Spanish, and they don't know the language or anything about their culture, and it's just really big regret. And because of the unique perspective that being a Chicana gives Anzaldúa, she's able to reflect on how her home has not tried to accept her, even though she maintains her two cultures. She uses locations of kitchens and hospitals so that everyone reading the piece is able to relate to the lack of humanity that is in those places, just as the people who tried to eradicate the Spanish culture and make them American had no humanism. Because of that, I see this piece being able to be discussed in a generic criticism with the piece by Villanueva and Powell that was read for Tuesday, because they both talk about the way of an oppressor, even though they're by no means written in the same style. My question that resulted from these readings is not an easily answered one. It's evident that these opinions of what it means to be American does not include speaking Spanish or anything else that can be associated with a race other than white, are ingrained in me because they were ingrained in my parents, by my grandparents, and their parents, and so on. But Anzaldúa suggests that people embrace other cultures in order to change this whiteness. But how do we embrace it if most white people are not willing to learn it because it has been minimized for so long? I came from an area of Southern California where half the people hate the mainly Mexican people who have moved to the US to find work, and the other half that embrace them because they're super vital to the way life works there. But how do we show the stubborn half of people how to embrace the different culture that's coming into the area and becoming more prevalent, and how do they embrace the culture, their unique perspective, and how they can teach us to change our culture to be more exclusive?